Okay, we're ready to go.
Yes, we are ready to go.
Good.
You are live now. Yes, excellent. Welcome, everyone. This is once again your host, Shailesh, bringing you Emotional Wellbeing Series, a topic of all sorts of topics that affect our emotional well-being. And today we have the pleasure once again to invite an esteemed guest of speaker from UK all the way. She is online, but she is online with us, but she's the coach of English. And what a pleasure once again, Sarah, to welcome you on this show. But today I am inviting you for a different topic altogether. And this is a topic which is very close to me also, and it's close to every human, I guess, because it is a topic called language identity. And identity is to describe identity. We come with lots of identity. We want to be identified with lots of things, whether we have property, whether we have wealth, whether we have friends, whether we have relationships. We want to identify and we want to attach that identity with us. But language is something that makes us who we are. Language is something that is our like a DNA, where we communicate easily. Nobody needs to tell us. We learn automatically. But today we are going to uncover lots of things. It is identity, whether it is a good thing or whether it's a crisis in the current world that we are living. So I'm going to have a great conversation today and trying to understand, uncovering lots of things, because Sarah Spicer is a coach for English, and she deals with lots of multilingual people, humans that we come with. And what more than it was my pleasure to invite her to this show and uncover from her, because that's her real experiences. That's her real kind of DNA that she is transferring, or energies transferring, we call it. And understanding different languages is one thing. Identifying is another thing. So we are going to uncover a lot of things today. So without further delay, welcome Sarah to this beautiful topic called language identity, which affects every single minute, I can tell, to our emotional well-being. Because if we can't communicate in our own language, then we struggle. And when we struggle, we try to adopt another language. And then another language also, if we can't communicate properly, then we again struggle. So there is a lot of like uncovering layers. Today, we are going to do that. So welcome, first of all, Sarah, to this beautiful show of our emotional well-being. And thank you for actually giving your time to do this show with me. So
Thank you very much, Shailesh. Always a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your kind words as well. Thank you, Shailesh.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, really. And it's amazing that this topic in the today's world, I want to start with you. In today's world, the way you have been coaching different multicultural people with a preset mind they come with, or with a preset cultural background, traditions, customs that they come with. And then when you want to teach them out of their culture, a totally different, like a language, which is not known to them, which doesn't even know simple things, how it makes, like when you pronounce or when you talk, and how it can change the meaning or the perspective of the person who is listening. So I want to really understand this. Today, you're going to be a talker and a listener, and I'm going to enjoy that.
I hope so. Okay. Well, I'll just give you a little bit of background about what I do as well, just give the audience a bit of background. So I am an English language coach, but also an intercultural communication coach. Because although I've been an English teacher for many years, now I focus on helping people from overseas who come to the UK for work. And yeah, what I found by working with this group, they tend to come to me as a coach because they're not feeling confident in their skills. And I think with English specifically, there's there's sort of a difference between the English that you would be using in an international environment and the English that's actually used in the UK. And that's where there's some kind of disconnect, which people then don't feel confident and might not feel part of the group that they're in. So obviously English itself is international.
It's international.
Yeah, and most people that I'm teaching have maybe even used English in international business. So they're quite a high level already. But in international business, when you're communicating with other, let's say, non-native English speakers, English is a tool to communicate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's literally just a tool. There's not all the cultural baggage that goes with that language that you would have, say, in your first language. So I think that's the first distinction to make there, that, you know, the language itself, you could have, it can impact your identity, so who you are. Because people tell me, it just even before they come to the UK, there's certain things that you can express in English that you maybe can't in other languages, because we have many words with slightly different meanings that you use in slightly different contexts. And also vice versa as well. There are things you can express in other languages that you can't express in English. So people tell me they feel different when they're communicating in English and in their first language. Yeah, but I think the extra level when my clients come to the UK is the fact that then they have to communicate with British people, and it's not just the language, then it's the culture. And this is where people, because identity, you have your personal identity, but also that social identity. And I think people come to me feeling they can't make those connections with people at work or outside of work, or they're not achieving the success that they really deserve, and they don't know what it is, what that barrier is. And sometimes it's not the language, but it's the culture, and not feeling part of that group and not really understanding why there's a barrier there.
So do you think language is one of the things, no matter what language it is, but language is one of the that shapes the identity, or that gives the birth to the identity, or it is the other way around?
Yeah, well, one of those questions, isn't it? And an age-old question. I'm probably, in reality, it's a little bit of both. You know, because you've got the language itself and the grammar structures, the words that are generally used, and that's, if a word doesn't exist in your language, how do you conceive of that concept if it doesn't exist? But then on the other level, you've got different ways that you use a specific language. So for me, for example, the way that I talk to my friends is going to be different to the way I'm speaking now, which is going to be different to the way I speak to my parents and my partner. And you create your own language within the language. There's certain words that you use, certain phrases that you use, there's a way that you speak, there's your accent, and to a certain degree you have some kind of control over this, whether it's subconscious or not. So I think you can shape your identity through the language as well.
Absolutely.
It's sort of a bit of both.
It's a little bit of both, and I think that's why we get crisis. That's why this topic is very important, that, you know, whether should you identify yourself as a language, or should we identify as yourself, as your culture, or as your human being that you are first. And that's something, it's very challenging. And you try to identify yourself, and you try to find yourself who you are, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it reminds me of a story, because I think why this resonates with me so much, and when I'm working with my clients, is because I've had this crisis myself, a kind of identity crisis. So I started my teaching career in Thailand. Well, I taught a little bit in UK first,
Sure.
and then back in 2007, I went to Thailand. And I'd never been to Asia before, anywhere in Asia. I'd been to Florida, the USA, and Europe, but I hadn't got much further. So I was quite aware that it was completely different culture, different language. And I was determined to learn the language and be respectful of the culture. So I was reading up and everything. And I did quite well, and I really wanted to adjust, but I really wanted to fit in. And I think that was the first mistake. I wanted to fit in and be hidden within the culture of the country. And I know with time, I lived in Bangkok most of the time. But then a few years in, I spent a lot of time in the Northeast, where I was surrounded by Thai people. I had a Thai boyfriend at that time. So I was totally immersed. And I always remember my friend saying to me, a Thai friend, "Sarah, you're just like a Thai person." And I was like, yes, I fit in, but I'm never going to actually fit in, really. But I felt like I'd adjusted to the culture so much. I was using the language properly to a degree. So I felt like I fitted in, and I thought that was what I wanted. But after a few months, I felt I'd lost myself, like who I was, because I'd adapted so much to the people around me. I didn't know who I was anymore. There's certain things, but there were certain things in Thai culture that I, resonated with me. And, in Western culture, it's in the UK, it's important to being loud and being the person that speaks the most is celebrated. Whereas I'm not that person. I'm a quieter, more reflective person, more introverted. And this was seen as celebrated a bit more in Thailand, or it was at that time anyway. And so there's certain aspects of the culture that resonated with who I was inside. So there's certain things I liked, but there's other things that, didn't, but I'd adapted so much. This was my identity crisis, I think.
Yeah, I can see that. I can tell. Anybody would be like, when they're trying to adopt something, that is definitely, or trying to fit in, the word that you use is perfect, because we all try to fit in. We all try to adjust and adapt and flexible and to do that. But this is where we become more identity conscious. That's why we try to do all those things. We are not authentic anymore. We are not really genuine. That's the way we are, because we are trying to become something that we are not. That's what I personally feel.
Absolutely. And I think that's the difference there, isn't it? It's because you've got your identity, your authentic self. People talk about this authentic self, but I don't think it's completely static, this authentic self. I think there's certain values and beliefs and behaviors that you have, and I think your values are probably the core part of your authentic self. But it is fluid as well. We adjust
fluid as well.
So I'm full of contradiction. It's finding that balance, though, isn't it? Because I think we have our authentic self, but then through our experience, we adjust and adapt, and we take on different things from our experience. But it's finding that balance. Don't lose yourself.
Exactly.
Or that group.
And that's where we lose our identity, I guess. And that's then we don't, and then it's very hard to come back to our own identity. We just don't recognize ourselves anymore, because we have been trying to adapt. That's all good. But as you said, like, you don't have to completely change yourself or transform yourself. You need to be who you are, and then take all the best or the good things that resonates with you, and the core values, as you said. That's the key thing for every human when they
absolutely,
because ultimately we are all humans, and then we have the similar kind of resonance goals in life, but the direction and the path and way of handling or way of doing that or looking at things is maybe different, but the things are quite similar, and that's where we resonate with certain things. So, if I want something, it's very simple. Like I always say to me, if I had to drink a water, I can drink the water. You may drink it in a different style or a different way, but still the water is the water that resonates with us and that helps us basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So this is something I thought. Anyway, you go ahead, tell me. You were saying something.
Was I saying something? Let me remember. Yeah, well, just on the topic of culture as well. Obviously there's a lot more than just, there's so many different things that influence you. It's not just your national identity. There's within a country as well, obviously, what is British culture? There's so many aspects to it. So when I talk about it with my clients, because they're often trying to adapt to that, it's it's tendencies in behavior. But I'm sure people have felt maybe an identity crisis in certain workplaces if they're working in a job and it doesn't really resonate with who they are and they feel like they lose themselves in it. I think again that's a
So how
is identifying too much with a group, changing too much to fit that group, and losing your personal identity.
Absolutely. So when you were teaching this and different cultural people coming into for learning or for understanding the language, what was the impact, that you felt or that you feel as a coach or as a teaching tool that you are teaching, but then you come teaching to those people who are different cultural backgrounds. So not necessarily you may have experience with Thai, but you may not have experience with another culture and another culture. And so everybody has got their own way of, but your experience could be limited to only one culture, another culture. But ultimately, you are here to give that language identity or learning language for them to understand the one language which they are completely not aware of it, and to make them aware of that language or the way you speak or the way you pronounce or the way you talk and how it affects your emotional well-being at that time, because they are already embedded in them culturally a language which is already there with them. Now they are trying to put another language which you are trying to teach them. What do you feel, or what was your experiences with this cultural background people wanting to learn a language and their emotional well-being? Can you feel it, sense it? What experience you have?
I think maybe it's different at the beginning. When people are first learning the language, they're so focused on just being able to basically communicate.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't have such the impact, but saying that, I think it is important early on to teach in English, particularly when if people are in the UK, what is seen as polite. So politeness is probably the biggest thing that is what is seen as polite is different in different cultures. So now that I'm in the UK, obviously I work with people from many different cultural backgrounds. So they're all coming into it with their own, don't want to say baggage is not right, but the experiences and viewpoints. But the key thing here is, I think it does totally impact their well-being, because often when people come to me, they've lived in the UK for a while, they've been working in the UK, but they're feeling left out. They're not feeling part of the group. They don't feel like they fit in. And the first thing they think is, my English mustn't be good enough. It must be my English isn't good enough, my language, and that's why I can't relate to people. And okay, obviously I can help people to, correct mistakes and things like that. I think the thing that's making them feel disconnected isn't necessarily the language, but it's understanding how the language is used.
Yeah.
So I think we mentioned this on the last conversation that we had, but one of the biggest things is British people using indirect language. Um, so sometimes when if your boss is telling you to do something, they won't, in order to be polite, they won't say, send an email. Well, yeah, they'll phrase it as a question. Would you mind sending that email, please? And this is where there's some disconnect, because if somebody asks you a question, generally you feel like you've got a choice.
Yeah.
But actually that's not what they mean. And then we have these misunderstandings, and these happen, little things can happen, and they build up every day. And then there's this misunderstanding between people, like maybe they think you're impolite, or you don't think they're honest because they're not saying what they mean. And it's that, really, it's that communication. It's where culture meets language, where people feel left out, don't feel good of it, and it totally impacts their life. You know, if you can't build connections, or you find it difficult to build connections in your work life, your social life, you're not going to thrive at work. So it's so important to make people aware. And that's it. The first step really is being aware.
Being aware.
Being aware of your own tendencies. How do you communicate? And then understanding the tendencies of the place or the group that you're working with. And when you're aware of this, it sort of opens up your understanding. So you're not just assuming someone means the same as you. You're like, okay, maybe it could be they're trying to be polite, or it could be something else. So it's just opening up your understanding and being more aware.
So what would be your advice to those people culturally who wants to learn English, but then emotional well-being, as this is all about emotional well-being. We can talk about lots of topics that really affects our emotional well-being, but language is something that comes with a cultural background. Language is something that is completely embedded in you, and now you want to learn because you are adopting, or because you want to learn, and because you want to live with those people who have got a different language. And so you have to learn that language. So what is your advice on that regard, that in your experience that you found that the emotional well-being, if you really want to control it, or you want to make it more enjoyable and nice, rather than serious stuff, oh, I am going to learn this language, it's very serious, can't know. And so as you said, you know, I have not said correctly, there is a polite way of saying, there is a this way of saying. This affects our emotional well-being a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. So it's being aware of those things, but not attaching too much to it as well, because that's the other side of the coin, that people feel so worried about making mistakes. I think when you have an open mind about it and see it, be curious about people and the way they communicate and the way that you communicate. And as well, this is when you're not going to get so lost in somebody else's culture, because you need to build up your confidence and your self-concept, really. So when you're clear on what your core values are, what aspects of the culture do you resonate with, what don't you, and then you develop your own voice within that language. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a balance again.
Balance, but then how do you balance? Not everybody knows what's balance and how to balance it, but yeah, one thing I can tell, balancing is definitely a management act of how you manage yourself in everything and anything. So language also is one of those things that you have to manage, whether you like it, you don't like it. But tell me something emotional well-being wise, how enjoyable it is to teach, and how enjoyable it is to learn or to listen. And how does the people who are listening today, this beautiful topic, that they interact every single moment in their life, and they come into contact every single moment, different person, different language, barriers, what would be your thing? Like, take life, just when we say life is too short, just enjoy it, we say. What do you say about language? Life is too short. What's your word for language to make it more enjoyable, humor, and then make it
Yeah.
not like more. It's
Well,
a good way of learning language, and it's respecting other languages as well and understanding that. But
yeah.
what would you say to how to make it more enjoyable?
And more enjoyable. Yeah, well, I think the first is to get a bit of perspective, really, because with language, there's not an end to learning a language.
Exactly. Oh, very
And I
well.
don't mean that to be like, oh, there's never an end, this is never ending. But it's like, well, that's an amazing thing, because even language itself is always evolving.
Yeah.
I'm always learning new words and new phrases, and new words and phrases come into use. So if you have that mindset of, it's like having that growth mindset of,
Perfect.
well, the fact that it's never going to be, there's never an end to this, I can just enjoy the journey, I can enjoy the process. And then this helps you to get that curious mind. So notice, rather than thinking, oh, that person doesn't understand me, they're going to judge me, it's like, oh, that person didn't understand me, I wonder why. Being a bit more curious helps you to enjoy the process. And I think doing things that you enjoy in the language is going to absolutely help you enjoy the process. But when you get to that certain level where you can communicate, then, spend time listening to things that you enjoy in that language, reading things you enjoy, having discussions with people about your hobbies and your interests in that language. That's what it is, really. And it's, I think, because with languages specifically, because we're taught them in school and there's a grade, you're either good at it or you're not good at it. We've got that ingrained in our minds that you have to be correct 100%, but it's not about that. There's more to communication. It's not about saying everything absolutely correctly. I'm sure I've made a few mistakes today, but it's not about that. It's about, how do you say what you mean to say? How do you build that connection with the person that you're talking to? That's what it's all about, and that's what's beautiful about it, and hopefully can be that motivation and enjoyment and well-being. Enjoy the process.
Yeah, very well said. I think to all the listeners, what I understood and what I take out from this, what you just now said, is so beautiful, that you also keep learning different languages, even though you know this your own language. Still, everybody knows their own language. However, they think they know, but there is so many things they don't know about their own language, and you keep learning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Learning, you keep learning and discovering different, as you said, curious mind, discovering different words, different meanings, and different sentences, which we haven't even heard or which we haven't even said. So when you are a child, you do something. When you are an adult, teenage, every phase, you have got different interaction and different words you learn from different people. So that's beautifully, very well said, Sarah. I really agree. So would you agree, like, you don't complete anything, you just enjoy the journey, just as your language also as a journey? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no end to it, really, but that's the beautiful thing about it.
That's the beautiful thing that I agree.
And then I think with time, it's what I help people do is to kind of cultivate their own voice in the language.
Okay, beautiful.
So it resonates with them, because this is when we get to that identity crisis, when you feel like, oh, I have to say this to be polite in the UK. Well, or if someone's very direct personally and they feel like, oh, now I have to be indirect. You don't. If that doesn't resonate with you, there's plenty of people in the UK that are going to appreciate the fact that you're direct and transparent. That's who you are, and people like that. It's just being aware of, if there's some kind of misunderstanding, that might be the reason why. you know, and making that aware, starting discussions with people about it as well. Yeah.
So how do you make those learners or the listeners, when they are first time learners, first time understanding the language that you are teaching? What was your kind of a real mantra or a message to them that, you came here to learn and I am not here to correct your mistakes or this, but I am here to make you understand the whole process and keep learning the process, because
Yeah.
someone else can come and teach you in a different way. But that's the beauty, as you said before, that there is no end to it. You can keep learning, and there can be different ways of learning, right? So what would you say to these? And because that's the emotional well-being, because people come with a perception, people come with a preset mindset, because they think, oh, I have to learn English. It's a big thing. It's it's a huge burden on me to understand and to learn, So what sort of message you would give to the people who are first-time learners? What would you say to them? With what sort of mindset they should come?
Right. And I think, well, with English, I think absolutely it's a burden to lots of people. I think there's many people around the world that don't want to come to the UK, USA, New Zealand.
Yeah.
But they have to learn it to get a good job or to make their way ahead. It's really valued around the world. So I think with that, it's thinking about the future. So rather than, oh, this barrier, it's taking your mind into the future. And when you can communicate well in that language, what will your life be like? So, and if you're just beginning English, probably you won't be watching this, but let's take English as the example. So say when you can communicate in English, all the things that you'd be able to do, so you can have that job and have that promotion, and then the life that will allow you to have, or all of the countries you could travel to, all the people you could communicate with, all the cultures that you could learn about around the world. When you put your mind into the future and visualize what your life could be like, that's such a good motivator and can kickstart that, could be that spark to get you going. Yeah. And that's when I do coaching with my clients, that's really what it is. It's visualizing that future. What would your life be like when you are that more confident speaker? Really helps us to start. And then obviously lots of praise along the way, and doing things that you enjoy along the way is going to keep that momentum going.
So have you experienced when you are teaching and when they learn, but then now they have their own kind of way of expressing that same language which you taught them?
Yes.
Have you noticed that, or have you experienced that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would always encourage that as well, because it's all about having your voice and your way of communicating. I think as long as it's clear, as long as you're communicating clearly with the people in front of you, that's so important. So some of the funny things, I can't think of an example right now, but in English we have lots, well, in all languages we have lots of sayings like idioms.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, we talked about last time that you can't translate, like you hit the nail on the head, you got something exactly right. And sometimes clients will translate an idiom from their first language into English, and it just makes so much sense. And I love that, because people get the essence of what they mean.
Yeah.
I wish I had an example to give you right now.
Yeah.
So that sort of part, and accent is a huge part as well, because where I teach pronunciation, but I don't teach people to speak with a British accent, because of course you don't have to do that. It's about being clear, but embracing who you are. And I think accent is a big part of your identity.
Absolutely.
I mean, even me with my regional accent, obviously my accent's changed over time, but I'm from the north of the UK, and it's quite important that there's certain words that I pronounce in a certain way. that I would never change because it's part of who I am, you know.
But that is the beauty of it, as you said before, you are curious, you keep learning. And then when you mix with, like you went to Thailand and then you had a different kind of a resonance, but then the English that you must be speaking to make the person understand, and the person who wants to speak to you in that same English language so that you can understand his accent and his way of expressing, is always a mind-boggling emotional kind of thing, where whether I said it correctly or not, but most importantly, whether I said that I wanted to communicate, whether that person get that or not. That's the key thing, right?
And that's the most, I hate to say it again, but balance. I think everything that I do, and it's a different balancing point for different people, but I can't say, just like somebody with a strong regional accent from the UK, you can be so tied to your regional identity that you don't make any changes. You don't adapt to the person you're speaking to. Or you can imagine you'll speak to someone else that doesn't understand that accent. You can adapt certain things to make yourself clear without completely changing your accent, if that makes sense. So, people have accents from different countries. I will identify little things they can change to be clear, but I'm not changing their overall accent. Do you see what I mean? So you've still got that identity, but it's about being clear in the way that you speak. And it's like me, I had a more northern accent. But then obviously my job, I'm communicating with people from around the world. Obviously I've adjusted and adapted, and it depends on who I'm speaking to. But I think most people can tell, I should hope, that I'm more northern than southern.
I guess like when you live with some people, or when you live within certain area, and a certain area has got a certain dialect, certain accent, and then you become one of them. Even though you may have a different accent, you just muddle into them, you just adapt into them, or you just mix them into that, right? And so there's nothing wrong in it. But that's the beauty of it, our emotional well-being. When you adapt, when you are flexible to accept, and when you are ready to talk their same tone that others are talking, then your emotional well-being is quite different to when, if it is in tense mode. So if you are tense to speak and to adapt, if you're in tension, if you're in stress, then that's a different kind of emotional impact that you can have.
Exactly. And I think it all comes from that self-concept and being okay. A lot of things that I talk about in, because I'm a neurolanguage coach, so it's sort of
that's right, you are also I forgot, listeners, she is also a neuro-language coach. So obviously we are talking about not just from the mouth or the tongue the words come, but also it flows from the brain.
Absolutely. And so it's from the perspective of how does the brain work. Everyone's brain is different. And how with that in mind of how the brain works, how can we find the best way that works for you? And that's the key thing. It's different for everyone. But something that I encourage a lot is mindfulness, because we know mindfulness is great for our well-being, whether it's meditation or doing some form of yoga, or even just being out in nature and being in that present moment. It's so good for the brain, and it's so good for learning languages, because it helps to build the connections in the brain. Just this brain state is better. It also, because you're so focused and you're training the brain not to be distracted, it makes you a better learner. It makes you more observant of the way people are communicating, so that curiosity comes naturally. And also that calming of the brain. It's calming the flight, what is it? The fight, flight, or right. Anyway, response. So that stress response when you're speaking, and that's when you say, when you're intense and you're like, oh, I'm really nervous in this situation, everything becomes so serious. And that's when you start to forget words, like I just did.
But
When you calm the brain,
it came to my mind just now when you were talking about the calmness, the neuro brain and the language. I was like, I don't know, it's just out of the blue. Correct me or say anything if I say this. Do you think language and music, like when you hear the music, it's like something in your ears, in your brain that it triggers in your heart, mind, mindfulness when you say it. Any music you learn or you listen, any music, no matter, it doesn't have any language barrier, but it is a music. And the rhythm and the tone and everything that melts into your body, mind, soul. It doesn't recognize you as what culture you are from. It just hits you on your heart. It just hits you on your brain. So many culture like many different cultures music, and someone like different cultures. So this language. I wanted to ask you this. I just came out of the blue. Is language is also something like that, where when you hear from different people with same language in different accent, different language, you feel good. Sometimes you feel laughing or smiling, but or whatever your emotions are, reactions to that language. But at least there is a reaction to those. Just like the music, you react and you enjoy and you make fun, whether you like it or you make fun or whatever, but you enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Language also is like that, like a music to the ears.
I think there's so many parallels actually between language and music, because it is a kind of language, really.
Exactly. That's what I
go together. There's certain notes that go together, certain chords, and the rhythm. Obviously, so it's like the sound of a language as well.
Sounds, yeah.
There's also the written form of music as well. So absolutely. And there is evidence that shows that people who are more musical tend to be better at languages as well. Now, whether that's something innate, whether it's like from nature or whether it's something that's, you've learned a language, you've learned music. Now it's the same sort of idea of learning languages. It could be that, but absolutely, I think there's resonance.
I just thought that it sounds like that because when you hear someone's language, even if you don't understand, you still listen, but you don't understand. But your body, mind, emotions are still attracted to that language. Whatever you don't understand, you still get attracted. It's like music. You still get attracted to the music. No matter which culture you come from. When there is a rhythm going on, you get attracted. So I thought immediately that is language also like a music to get attracted and distracted?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about, attracted or distracted. I think, the rhythm and the sounds, I think you have certain impressions of languages, whether it's Spanish or Italian, there's certain impression that you have from the sound of the language. And
correct.
I suppose that probably impacts on the way that you behave when you speak that language as well.
Correct.
I know a friend of mine who's English, spent a lot of time in Brazil and speaks Portuguese very well. And he's a different person in Portuguese. He's a lot more expressive. Emotional. So, and that's probably the sound of it and many different things, and the culture as well that it's tied to. I'd be interested to know, what's your experience of this? Have you ever felt crisis of
I'm good that you asked me this question. I'm glad, because I was fascinated by language since childhood. And when I went to Dubai, I tried to learn Arabic. In India, there are so many languages that I come from, and different states and different dialects, and different state has got different dialects. And so it's very interesting. You laugh, you make fun, you enjoy those language. But I was always curious, as you said, like, and everybody should be curious about languages, because language is the most amazing, beautiful thing that has happened to the human mankind for communication. And
Yeah.
like, even if you can't talk, you can make noise from your hands, from your mouth, and to make understand that what you really
Yeah.
want. Just like a
Yes.
child, when the child is born, you don't know what their child is speaking, but when they speak in a different kind of a tone or accent that they are into, they may not speak full words at all, but still you understand them. So if you
Yeah.
understand them, I was very curious about that. So my experience, if you look at me right from my childhood, I used to love other neighbors, what they are speaking and how they are speaking, and what that means, and is it I'm okay to. I taught even my kids. I taught different languages because they should learn. I said,
Yeah.
no matter, and unless you make them, unless you talk any language, other
Mhm.
person will not know how much you know, or how much you like, or how much you are understanding, or how much you are accepting the languages. And I think curiosity and acceptance is the most key thing. So to me, languages has always been a very prime important factor to understand the good old language, where it originated from, and who researched it, and how it came, and why we speak different language. Even though we are all humans, why can't
Yeah.
we speak one language? So then I realized it is nature. If you look at the air, water, fire, they have got different sounds. Okay. The earth, the space, and the clouds, they got different sounds. Do you
Mhm.
think, are they communicating with those sounds? Is that their language, individual's language to communicate? Sometimes I get curious. I get too deep.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
no, go deep. Don't mind.
this is a bit deep into my awakening of spirituality. When you look at it, it's very simple that you have to accept every single person's language, and you have to accept that there is lots of sounds around you, and some sounds you like, some sounds they make you irritate, or some sounds make you this, but they still, if they are not there, you feel left out. If they are
Yeah.
there, you feel, as I said, attracted, distracted, whatever you call it. We
Mhm.
need those things around us.
Yeah.
We can't have just one language. I always thought, if I know only one language, it will be such a boring. Imagine if everybody is talking one language.
Absolutely. And how boring is that? Completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, because it's interesting, in India you say there's lots of languages.
Yeah.
Do you think English dominates everything, that there's those languages die out? Are any languages
Well,
becoming extinct?
yeah, it is. It is in a way, if you look at it, because India was always dominated, as you know, by the British, and then Indians were also curious about learning English. So
Yeah.
it goes both ways. Even though we may say that, okay, the Britishers were there, that's why they know English. No, it's not about that. I personally feel language can be there in front of you, but if you are not interested in learning, you will never learn it. But
Mm.
when the language was there at that time, there were many Indians who were interested, and no matter whatever background, whatever different dialects they were speaking, they were curious about learning English, and they learned English. And so what has happened over a period of time, the generations, as we say, that we fade out, or it fades out a little bit,
Yeah.
unless every day you speak. That's why I said it will be boring if one person speaks only one language. So
Mm.
in India, what has happened, they know that the Sanskrit is one of the oldest language, they believed, before even English. And then when different people came, and different languages were originated, and then English was made more prominent, because they were the most, for many years they were there. So it was like 20-30 generations probably were there who were speaking and who passed on that language to their kids. And today, what has happened with the globalization, everybody has gone into different countries and different languages they are learning, and they had the option to learn. Okay, so if India was only talking about their own languages, we struggle. I mean, I struggle. If you go from one state to another state, their dialect is different. And if you have to understand them, it's a challenge. It's not easy. Forget about English only. It is our own challenge. And so I think dying out, when you said, it's not dying out, I would say more, but I would say more like it's people are more used to, and they want to convert everything into one language that commonly everybody understands, that commonly everybody can relate, everybody can resonate, basically. That's what has happened, basically. And it's right or wrong, good or bad, is we are not going to discuss on that, but it's an identity again. This is exactly what our topic is. Identity crisis.
Yeah. And I suppose, everything evolves, doesn't it? I mean, English itself, when it was in the UK, it's influenced by so many different languages. You've got French, Latin, Germanic languages. It's all a big mishmash. And that's why it's difficult for many people to learn, unfortunately. And historically, it spread because of bad reasons, really, imperialism and all this. So there's certain aspects of that, and that's why having this international language that everyone can communicate. It's not British, it's not American, it's not. It's standard international English, global English. I think that's important for everyone to have. To communicate, and I can tell you a lot of British people need to learn that international English. To be able to communicate more clearly. Absolutely. So.
Well, Americans also had their own English when they got independence. They tried to rewrite the whole English into their own way of understanding, and they knew that British were the origins who came as an English. But then they wanted to have their own English, and they did that. They put that, they forced that. But either way, as you said rightly, any language that can be communicated, that can be accepted by everyone and anyone, irrespective of where it comes from, irrespective of identifying where it is and what it is, enjoy the language rather than blaming, because it's there, it's not going to go away. These languages, every single language is going to be here. It's not going to go away. The more you learn and the more you're curious and the more you speak, that's where you make your own evolvement as a human rather than as an identity of human. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Identity of human is very, very, very risky and very dangerous, because then you are trying to bring that rule of the jungle or the king rule of the jungle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's too strongly identifying with a group. I don't ever be that healthy.
Exactly.
Really.
It's not going to be healthy. Yeah.
Of course, it's good to feel part of a group, but not identify so strongly with it that you sort of forget who you are.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. No, you're right. Absolutely. So coming to this authenticity, identity of a language, that wherever authentic language they come from, what would you say when you are, making this to express how you can be expressing yourself to become an authentic yourself while communicating in the second language? How can you be more authentic while communicating the second language? How would you describe that? How would you express this?
So if you think of the language as like the parameters, really, this is what we're working with. But when you get to a certain level in the language, you can cultivate your own voice within that language. So particularly in English, you can choose what phrases you want to use, you know, what are the words that you identify with you. I mean, it even goes back to, say I'm teaching someone how to write an email. There's certain boundaries that are expected in an email, but there's certain phrases that people use, but you can decide which ones to use. It's not completely set in stone. So there's like the boundaries, but you can cultivate what you want to use within those boundaries. That makes sense. Obviously, there's certain rules that we have to be clear, but we can work around those rules.
What is the mindset? What is the mindset they should have when they want to retain or restore or retain their authenticity and yet learn enjoyably the second language?
Well, I think it's not necessarily being true to your values, knowing what your values are, and that's absolutely important.
Right.
But at the same time, not identifying so much with maybe your national culture that you can't adapt, and being like, it's okay to adapt. We adapt when we speak to different people all the time. So if you adapt to be a bit more indirect in this situation with this person, that's okay. You're not losing a part of who you are. Absolutely. In fact, you're probably staying true to your values, that you want to be clear and you want to be polite and kind and think about that other person, if that's your value. So you don't have to change everything about the way you speak, but if you adapt to the person you're speaking to, you're not compromising who you are at the core. And like when you know who you are at the core, when you work on that, you're less bothered about adapting anyway, because you know.
I think, how much authentic you can be, that's how you have to be. And so not worrying about what affects you from, or fearing or saying that I need to do this accurately, correctly, rightly. You know, these are things that people get too much hung up on or bogged down.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is where the whole dynamics of identity affects our emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I'm helping people with the understanding the culture, it's not to say you have to be like this to be polite. It's more to be aware that if there's a misunderstanding, that might be the reason why. If you say someone looks at you like this, it could be because what you said came across as rude, even though you didn't mean it. And then you can adjust accordingly or explain, oh, I didn't realize I'm from wherever. I'm a lot more direct. So we sort of illuminate, bring into the light what this understanding might be, rather than you have to communicate in this way because you're in the UK. Absolutely not. It's just being aware of where those misunderstandings, what the root cause of them might be.
So I'm going to ask you this very interesting, that I feel, as a language, what would you say? You are a teacher, you have been coaching, you have been making people understand the English language, but you yourself, Sarah, how do you see every single language in the universe that we come across? And is there a thing that we have got so much options to choose and pick, and likes and dislikes, all sorts of things we have with this language. So what is your view, and how do you relate with different languages, and how do you see different languages? What's your perspective on everything? That you being a language coach, obviously, it's very much, I'm not going to ask you personalize, okay, this is your favorite or this is your choice. It's not about that, but you said that very beautifully, that, as long as internationally you can communicate with everyone and people can understand, that's the key for our emotional well-being, right? But in terms of your personal kind of view on all the languages that we have this luxury to choose and to say and to talk and to listen and to pick and to like and to dislike. How would you describe this whole universe that has given us these languages?
Well, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it, really?
I know. One word, describe, beautiful. I love
It would be
that.
such a shame if everyone spoke the same, because when I work with people from different countries, we go deep into what are the differences, like say grammar. If there's a grammar mistake they keep making, usually it's because there's a difference in their first language. So I learn so much about other languages and how that shapes their own identity and certain cultural things as well. And that's just so interesting, and I'll never get bored of that. In terms of learning another language, there's too many that I could want to learn, and just as I'm about to start one, then another one comes along. But if you decide, it's really about, I think it's difficult to motivate yourself to put in the work to study a language just because I just want to study Finnish because, or whatever, because I want to learn it. I think there's a certain kind of person who likes to just know all these languages. But I think if you really want that motivation to learn, it's what are you going to use it for? Why do you want to learn? So, for example, I'd love to travel around South America. So probably the most commonly spoken language is Spanish. So that gives me, if I could speak Spanish fluently, I could, travel around and get to know local people more. And that's what motivates me to learn, is what could I do with that language in the long term, rather than the language itself.
So I'm going to come to that final, we are going to come to an end, but I want to end this with what is your motivational mantra, or what is your motivation to all the listeners, then how to accept and adapt these languages, no matter whether you know it or you don't know it, but what is the motivational message that to learn this language, or any language for that matter, without, having this identity crisis? What's your motivational subject that you could, one word or two words or one sentence, in you can say that? How do these listeners can take it from this conversation that we had today? Was beautiful. But identity and language, they are two same kind of heads, but you got to recognize, you got to accept, and you got to not fall into the identity crisis, but learn the beautiful languages that we have been given. So how to motivate that? Sarah, I'm going to motivate myself,
no pressure,
so that I can learn.
Be curious about yourself and others, and enjoy the process.
Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Be curious and enjoy the process.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, I think with curiosity, you're opening your mind, aren't you?
Absolutely. I think very well said, because when you open your mind, you are having so much of possibilities of knowing so many things.
Yeah.
That's the beauty that you very well said. And that's the motivational. I take it from here to all the listeners. This is the topic, and this is the motivational for you guys, that please go ahead and learn any language that you like to, or you love to, or you don't want to, but you still be curious to know about it.
And be curious of what could it lead to in the future.
Yeah, unless, as they say, unless you try, you won't know. And unless you uncover, you won't know. Unless you explore, you won't know. I think exploration is one of the key seeking. That's why you can believe in languages, you can have belief in cultures, but exploring is one of the key ingredients, and language is supposed to be explored. That's what it is all about, because we are not having one thing. A sun is only one. So you can only look at that, and everybody will look at the same energy and the same process. But look at the languages. They got so many. And we can look at in a different angle, in a different way, and yet get motivated and yet get energized.
And when you learn different languages, it itself opens your mind, because you're looking at the world in a different way as well. Through a different language, you're learning like another dimension of the world. I know, another
dimension. Don't you think language can be called one of the dimensions of a human mankind or human journey?
Maybe.
Yeah. So it's a great pleasure, Sarah, to talk to you once again. And this topic is never ending. And I know you can talk a lot on this because you are breathing this topic every single moment. And what a pleasure to have and talk to you on this level and on this topic with a person who has got her own experiences and sharing her experiences, but also giving a lot of insights. So listeners, one message final Sarah has told you, and I've taken is be curious and be explorative of everything that comes around. And enjoy. Yeah, sorry, that's the first. Okay, I'm giving you the last word, Sarah. Last word before we close this.
Thank you so much, Shailesh. Again, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope it's been interesting and useful. And I think having these discussions opens my mind as well. It makes me think. And thank you for sharing your experiences as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you for asking me that question, Sarah.
Yeah. Well. As I say,
no, it's really a good topic. And this is where all the listeners, we try to bring the best of topics that we can, open up and uncover ourselves, and lots of things are there to uncover. But if we don't communicate, if we don't talk today, this is language. We are talking in one language that we both understand. And there are listeners who are going to understand what we have talked today. And there are people who may not be able to talk today. So something that, I always say that, you got to be open with your mind, open up your mind and have that curious mind, but also have that back of your mind as a perspective, like enjoy the process of a human journey. So that's what I will end here. And thank you once again. Sorry for the technical difficulty. There was a call coming in probably, but I will definitely catch up with you with another beautiful, and we might have an extension of this topic, but I personally feel it is very vast. You cannot complete in 1 hour or even 10 hours or even one day, because it is a never ending, as you said, it's a never ending kind of a topic. And language is something very much core to everyone, core to every heart and every soul. So yeah, thanks once again, Sarah, for this beautiful conversation. And we will say goodbye now, and we will catch up once again with this once again. So all the listeners who are listening, if you want to connect with us and want to contact Sarah, please write to us and we will get in touch with you. Or if you need more information on this beautiful language identity or language topic, and please do so, please write to us. Communication is the key, and language is the tool for communicating. Is that right?
That's right.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you once again.